attitude needs to be in place for your training, what knowledge and what skill do they need to be able to do as a result of training. So we want to be clear on the outcome, the goal of the training. Now, where they'll be at the end of that lesson, where they'll be at the end of the course, where they'll be as a result of teaching and that knowledge. They're important things. I'll give you an example on this course here, generic 2-day trainer course, say learning styles module. Today, after lunch, I'm going to teach the learning style module. Okay? The attitude in place, you guys as a group, is to recognize that not everyone learns in the same way. The need to have a training that allows each participant to learn in a way that suits them. So that's my attitude, but the attitude that you bring to the party is to have that recognition that we don't all learn in the same way. And also, the model of learning styles, the VARK, visual, auditory, read, write, kinesthetic model, is context dependent too. So we choose a specific context as well, so we don't want to label people. It becomes an identity. You're visual, you're kinesthetic, you're whatever. You're not. It's context dependent. And when a lot of this stuff come out, and all this stuff, these models become apparent years ago, and the education system had also suggested, I don't know if it's a requirement now, but certainly when I was teaching, they would look favourably at learning styles. Ofsted would look favourably at doing learning styles. Everyone was like, really, let's get the learning style questionnaires out there, let's get PowerPoints, lectures, let's do it. So they got sort of sidetracked. From a scientific point of view, you can find holes in anything, any model, and certainly in this model. And that's why I say have the open mind. You can find the questionnaires out there, but what would be more appropriate is to just devise your training.
Yeah, incorporate it all in your training.
Exactly, rather than think too much, who is this, who, because it is context dependent. So that's sort of the attitude point of view is really important. Think the knowledge that has to be transferred. When we talk about the aim, is the knowledge needed. Okay, so from the point of view of the module I'm covering after lunch, the learning styles, what each of the learning style models looks like, okay, and the activity, what type of activity will suit each learning style. So we'll cover how visual learners, auditory learners, read, write, or auditory digital, kinesthetic learners. We'll look at activities that will help people who have a preference in a context to help them learn. And visual might be PowerPoint. Auditory might be lecture. Okay? Read, write might be giving literature to read and write, and while you do a lecture to fill things in and do whatever, discussion as well, and take things away and read over it in the evening. Kinesthetic, hands-on, delivering and practical. So these things to think about, knowledge to transfer, the skills to be developed based on the learning model, the learning styles model, the ability to follow specific steps to ensure an agreed outcome for a task. How to design training sessions that meets all the learning styles. So can you see the aim, transfer the knowledge, the skill, the outcome of that module. So after lunch we do learning styles. To use that as an example, the reason we're doing it is for you to be able to design a training session that meets every learning style. So we're sort of breaking things down, which is key. Okay, so we link one thing with the other thing. Are we all sort of clearer now on attitude, knowledge, okay, and skill to be developed? For me, to give you an example, and we touched on that, something sort of just sparked my mind there. We touched on attitude before our break, and I sort of been training for many years now across a broad range of areas. And a few years ago, notably, people sort of talked about making fun stimulating, making training fun. And the reason being is that if you enjoy what you're doing, we know scientifically now you retain information more if you're enjoying it. We know that if you're enjoying what you do, you're passionate about it. It's like people say, if you're passionate about what you do, work-wise, you never work a day in your life, so you really enjoy it. It's almost like this guy. It's like you take a group of footballers and you do running up and down a track. They'll moan. If you put them in a five-a-side game, they love it. And they're probably working equally as hard if you monitor them, because they're doing what they love doing. It's almost like this guy's training. And the same applies to, say, you know, if you're training in a tedious gym, you might enjoy training in a gym, I find it tedious, you might think, oh, goodness me, another. If you're walking on the countryside on a beautiful day like today, you're kind of enjoying it. You walk on the beach, but the exercise might be the same. So training to a point is the same. If you're enjoying it, you're finding it stimulating, it's fantastic, you know, to a point. But equally, what's really important too is never forget the skills you're teaching them. What they'll be able to do as a result of doing it. Because I've seen many trainers focus so much on making training fun, making it enjoyable, where they forget, what's my objective? Okay? Why are they there for? What do they need to learn? It's all good and well having a training session like Piccadilly Circus where everyone's having fun and games and enjoying themselves, but at the end of it, if they can't do what you intended to teach, what's the point of it? And I'll give you an example one time. I've probably used the example before. A few years ago, I was asked by it's a gym. It's a well-known chain of gyms. It was a branch of a well-known chain of gyms. And the dude, he emails me saying, can you do a training for our organisation? We're sort of struggling. And he knew of my work, and I'd worked with him before. I worked with him before successfully. In another gym he used to manage, he brought me back in. He knew of me. He goes, can you do a training for my staff? Sure. So we talked about his goals, what he wanted the training staff to do. Okay. He talked about the situation in the gym, where they were. Okay. They were struggling for retention of customer. He talked about some of the challenges they faced. So for me, it was very clear, very apparent what the goals were of the training. We talked about the goals of the training. So you're going to go in there, do the training that's going to help their staff with customer retention. It's going to help their staff with customer services. It's going to help their personal trainers engage with the members. We were very clear about the goals. We were really clear about where the gym was in the marketplace. And I've turned up and I've spent hours living a training program, as you do, meticulously gone out of my way. And I don't say gone out of my way because I was paid to go and deliver. And when I deliver, I want to do the business. So I put this training course together and used all my experience of all these years, not just in the gym environment, but also training, being a teacher, and so on and so forth as well, having that experience too. So I put all this sort of experience into it, and he had all the regional managers in there. They came to the session to see what I was all about. Some didn't know who I was. And we'd worked in the morning, and I'm giving them this information on how to engage. I'm giving them information on how to look at ways to retain customers. I'm giving them information on how the personal trainers can engage with the clients in an improved way. Steps they could take. Knowledge, we go back to here, that we were transferring. Through user experience and my understanding of the way people work, giving them skills to use. And I get to lunchtime, and I'm having a break at lunchtime, but I did my due diligence the day before to get a feel for the place, as you do. I like to feel the place out a little bit, walk around gym. And the guy who brought me in says, you know, can I just tell you something? And I said, you can tell me something if you want to. And he goes, I will back you no matter what. You know that, you worked with me before, I love your work, I think you're great at what you do, that's why I brought you in. There's one slight issue we've got at the moment. I said, tell. He goes, the issue we've got, the regional manager's in, they've come in to see what you're all about. We want to potentially roll some of this training out to other gyms in our environment. And the regional managers have come back to me at lunchtime saying that your training isn't entertaining enough, it's not fun enough. And I'm like, what? What did I just hear? My training's not fun enough? And he goes, oh, please don't tell them anything, because I'll know it's come from me. I said, no, I'm not going to say that you've told me anything. I'm not going to say I wouldn't say it, I wouldn't do that. It's in mine. I go, I'll come back after lunch and I'll make it fun. I'll make it enjoyable. He goes, oh, that's really good of you to make it enjoyable. I said, it's really interesting because we had this meeting about what the problem was, the gym. And I said, can I ask where you've got this sort of hypothesis about fun training? He goes, well, we had someone come in a few weeks earlier and she was fun. We played games. You know, at lunchtime we were massaging each other's backs and had music. And I said, wow. So you had games and played games. It was fun. You had music. So that's really fascinating stuff to me. So I come back after break, lunchtime, and you can hear a pin drop. And I got me flipping pen. I said, I believe I'm not entertaining enough for you. And you can hear a pin drop. I said, with the greatest respect, I've walked around this gym and I went to the change room and it looks like a swamp. It's disgusting. It looks like a damn swamp. I went upstairs in gym and the weights are all on the floor. I said, you've got these flipping dudes who are built like, you know, Adonises, leaving their weights everywhere. No one can pick them up. They're not putting them back. I tried to order some lunch at lunchtime and I didn't get served for 40 minutes because I was too busy talking about Big Brother at the, you know, behind the counter. Now, I've come in here and I've made a phone call for customer service and they didn't have a clue what the gym opening time, the class times. I said they're good, honest, hard-working people paying big money for a gym membership. Good, honest, hard-working people who are paying big money for gym membership who are not coming back. And you're putting banners outside this gym saying that you get a free pair of trainers and a heart rate monitor if you join. I said, you know what? If you want fun, Lady Gaga's playing in Manchester tonight. Sod off and watch Lady Gaga. We're here to flip and work. You're here to sort this out. So I said, I'll give you fun. You know, the last time I checked, I'm not bloody Bobo the Clown, as you do. I'm not being hired as a circus act, as you do. I said, you want fun? I said, you want fun? You need good. Get to that mirror and have a good look at yourselves if you want fun. And I ranted and raved and went off on one of my famous rants, as you do. And I thought, you know what? The long and short of it is, if you're serious about improving this organisation, clean the change rooms, serve people, pick those weights up off the ground, and get the place sorted out. Because customer retention is about retaining your clients. I said it costs more money to find new members than keep the ones you've got. Now, get your backside into gear and phone some of the clients and say, how come you're not coming back to the gym? And if they come back to the gym and they renew the membership, it's equally as good as someone new coming in because it's not costing a marketing budget. And they're worried about fun. You know, and that's the point I'm trying to make here is that we can be too worried about people are paying the time it takes for them to be there. That could be with their families, with their kids, with their loved ones. They could be doing many things. And for me, getting the balance between, you know, this new agey type fun and stimulation and that sort of stuff, between, okay, you're here to do a job. And at the end of it, you could hear a pin drop, and I think they had the realization. And these are people in that environment that are very awful, like, you know, from a psychological type point of view, they are very, and I admire for that point of view, but equally, you know, there's a job to get done. You're paying me money to do training, it's on my head, okay? I take it personally in the sense that I feel I'm honoured to be paid to deliver training, they want to know my knowledge, and they're going to learn what I think they need to learn. So the point being is that it's really important that you think attitude. You know, you can be everyone's best friend, you can tell people what they want to hear, that's easy enough. What they need to hear is different. Okay, you might not make great friends doing what I did. I didn't get a Christmas card by any of the regional managers. And I never got invited to any of their kids' christenings. I never got any cards. I'm sure they slated me afterwards, but I got the job done. And I got their respect. Because I'm not turning up, compromising what I think needs doing to help them based on my knowledge. And you guys the same as trainers, you do your own training courses, think attitude. You can walk away being like the person that he said went to the gym earlier than me. She was everyone's best friend. But she ain't going to flip and turn anything around doing that.
For the bit that I were doing, I think the fun element would be because of the audience.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be...
Yeah, and no,
it's more relaxing and takes them down. It can't be a...
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you know your audience for sure. And I'm all for creating experiences for people, making it enjoyable, making it fun as much as one can, as long as we don't compromise what the...
It's putting it across in a low-key way because,
for sure.
Because of the environment that they've come from.
100%. 100%. You know your audience.
Yeah.
But the point of view, equally, no matter who you're delivering training to, the key is they walk away with what they need to walk away with. Because you can make it enjoyable. If at the end of it they can't write a CV or apply for a job, if the training is geared up to do, then there's no point.
Yeah.
So I want to create an experience that people do because that can help move people, but equally there are skills I want to learn.
In the first module of the course I did, because they'd have theory to learn at home to make sure that they'd learned it, I did a quiz on the first day and I split them into teams and I bought some stupid squeaky toys and a box of chocolates for the winning team. So it was fun, but it was making sure that they
wonderful example. I think that's really key, and that's the key to all of it. And I think it's knowing your audience, and that's a great point you made there. Because for me, in the past I delivered training to people in care homes. So one of my remits was to do education, but also one of my remits was to deliver training as well for the organisation. So that environment, you were sort of stretched to what you could do lighthearted because the issues that we had and were going on, you couldn't really make a joke about some of the stuff that was happening in that environment. You might have light humour, but equally you had a far more degree of sensitivity because you knew, and we knew it was going on at the time I was living in training environment. There were some serious things that were going on outside the environment that were making headlines. We had to be very, very careful in that respect and had a lot of sensitivity. So making sure that the staff, we can make it enjoyable, but there's some serious things where they had to be aware of. But equally on top of that, the margins there were different in relation to young people being in the care home, to making sure they were very clear and knew as part of the induction the rules, ethics, a lot of things were to cover, and you couldn't really make light of certain things, albeit we had banter, a bit of a laugh, but equally your environment. Okay, you work for a sports team. I work for sports teams who are looking to improve, that they've won championships, and you're going in there, okay, at the end of the day, you can make it as enjoyable as you want to, but equally they want to win. It's a high-pressured environment. They've come in there, and it's about you pitching to the audience. You can have fun and games, have a joke, and equally in the corporate sector. It's all relative to where you are and how you do it. If you do an independent course, people coming to you, different mindset. So I think for me, be very clear and also know your audience. I want you to think about for a moment, who is your audience? Define your audience. Define the people you're working with and how you can make the transition as you widen your radar. Because you widen your radar. When I first did in training, I was doing training to so many people. Now you become more versatile. So you start with delivering to one group of people, one modality, then you start two modalities, three, and it widens the radar. So now I find myself delivering to different ends of the spectrum. Sometimes you've got to put one hat on, you're living one course, another course, and I think the key thing for me is to sort of know who you're pitching to. Okay, so sort of reinforce that. Know the attitude of the people you're working with. Your attitude too, you need to bring in. Okay? The knowledge that you're going to transfer. really important. The knowledge that they already have, the knowledge that they will need to have, the skills they already have too. You can do like a skills gap. Some might say that they already know what you're teaching. They've learnt it before, so it could be reinforced learning. You never have too much information. You know, you're always like varying, and people say, well, I've done that before. Well, that's good. Maybe you can help out then. Bring them in. Because you might get that too. But equally, this is another perspective. So the skills you develop is key. What they'll do as a result of your training is imperative. And that can be your list of outcomes, objectives even, goals for that segment. So what I want to do now, I'm going to sort of start doing an exercise shortly you can do. I'm going to think about your own training course or component to put a list of training objectives that are specific and measurable with your group, who you're working with. Okay? And you can use the SMART acronym. If you haven't done SMART acronym before, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, trainable, whatever, it doesn't really matter in that respect what acronym you use, as long as it's clear. Okay? So the key thing is, for this course here, the trainer course, to give you an idea of some of my objectives are, by the end of the session, okay, so I've chosen a couple, the learners will be able to describe the Honey and Mumford and VARK learning style models and give examples of what they include in a training plan to meet the learner's needs. So you'll be able to use Bloom taxonomy of learning domains to choose appropriate methods of assessment for your training sessions. We'll have identified at least one method of managing behaviour in a training session. So these are very clear. Where the goal is, from the point of view of this training course, well, 3 of the goals are for you to be at the close of play tomorrow. Okay? You can see the clarity there. We'll be able to identify, these are clear outcomes. Okay? So now think about one of your topics. Okay? I'm going to think about one of your topics, and we can start putting a draft objective for your training. Okay? So choose one of the topics you're going to deliver on training. It could be CV writing, it could be confidence going for an interview, it could be how to handle certain calls, it could be a module on coaching. So you choose one of the topics you're going to deliver and use the SMART acronym. By the end of the training session, participants will be able to. Okay? What you want to take into account is what participants will need to know as a result of the session. What they'll be able to do by the end of the session, and what attitudes, if any, they should demonstrate by the end of the session. They're quite useful. Okay? What they'll need to know, what they'll need to be able to do, attitude they'll demonstrate. Okay? And we're going to have a chance at writing out a draft shortly. Think about it this way. Okay, if I've got a football here and someone comes to me to learn to kick a football, they've come to the wrong person, by the way, as you do. But if they come to me and ask me to kick a football, I can say, okay, what you do to kick a football, put the ball down, foot alongside the ball, arms out for balance, head down, strike the ball, and they can sort of follow me. And they can do it, okay? And anyone could pretty much do it if they stood next to me and did it. Because they can stand along, I can guide it. Is that really learning? If I say, here's the gist of what to do, and I demonstrate, and they see me doing it, and I show them various ways of doing it, and give them some details on the instruction, and say, here's the ball, you go and practice it. When the person comes back next week to retain the knowledge at some point it's got to be experiential and practical, because they'll find their own way of doing it, or the way that works best for them. So do bear that in mind when you're doing any session. There's a point in the session that they get a chance to be experiential within the session. And that can be through role play, through discussion, through practical exercises. Because in the classroom is a good place to, in a safe environment, to be practical. So it could be learning how to take a phone call. It could be to do the interview role play. It could be to do a session. And make it as practical as you can, quite useful. And think, okay, what will they need to know as a result of the session? What will they be able to do at the end of the session? And what attitudes, if any, should they demonstrate? And
so,
yeah.
question B, would you answer question B based on what you've written for question A?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. So, okay, what they will need to know as a result of the session. So, to achieve the objective. So, if we sort of think about it this way, if we go back to here, if we go back to the knowledge transfer, so after lunchtime we teach the learning styles. So the knowledge needed is what the learning style model looks like and what activity suits each learning style. So that's the knowledge needed.
Yeah.
The skill at the end of it is how it is on a training session that incorporates all the learning styles. So if we go back to here, B is, A is what the learners, the participants, will need to know. So they'll need to know that people learn in different ways. They'll need to know that people, in view of what we're going to learn after lunch, they'll need to know that some people learn more visually, have a preferred way of learning visually, auditory, kinesthetic. They'll need to know what the model looks like. They'll need to know where to incorporate that, what could be useful. But B, by the end of it, they should be able to integrate into the training session.
So am I thinking this is right? So say draft objective for me is like, so let's say workshop on self-esteem.
Okay, and there's going to be a component within that workshop.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So the answer to question A was, participants will need to know, what I'll teach them, let's say, is human conditioning, mindset, beliefs, strengths and values.
Yeah, I mean, for me, let's say self-esteem, we can break it down even further. Is there going to be a lesson within that self-esteem? Is there going to be a...
Theory, well, yeah, about human conditioning.
Okay,
beliefs,
yeah.
mindset.
Yeah, so they'll need to know what self-esteem is.
Yeah.
They may need to know how self-esteem works. So they may need to know a bit more detail.
Yeah, which would fall into those topics that I've just said. So
Yeah. So you're transferring that knowledge to them.
yeah,
Because you're going in there anticipating that they from a diagnostic point of view, you have an idea
so
of
no
what they already
knowledge.
know. Okay, if they've got no knowledge at all, if they're working on that basis where the diagnostic they've got no knowledge, then what you're doing is starting from ground zero.
Yeah.
So what you do,
teach them
you're
about-
transferring that knowledge. As a result of having that knowledge,
Then they will-
what can they do?
So then that leads on to question B. So they will know how to shift their mindset.
By doing this technique,
Yeah.
by doing this process.
So am I getting it right?
Pretty much, yeah, I would say from what you're saying there, you're not far off. So let's sort of clarify what participants need to know as well as the session. So, okay, so to achieve the outcome,
They'll first need to understand this.
precisely.
Yeah.
So
And
the
then the
aim,
outcome of them understanding that is B. And then the
Yeah.
skills that, or what they'll be able to demonstrate and go away with is.
so the attitude could be let's look at self-esteem. That's a great thing. Without knowing too much about the training course, well, they can apply an intervention to improve self-esteem, and they could maybe learn a scale. The scale being how we can quantify self-esteem is not in the way we quantify running a race Because you run a race, it's physically quantifying the time. It's easy to sort of quantify. How does one measure self-esteem? You know, how do we measure self-esteem? And it's more challenging to measuring. Say, you can measure weight, you jump on a scale.
Yeah.
But how does one measure that? So the point being is that this could be knowledge we transfer, need to know. So self-esteem is difficult to quantify in the way you quantify weight or height or running a race.
Exactly. So
yeah, and as a result of doing that, then we can start.
Isn't it? So you'd ask that question.
Precisely, and that could be a diagnostic question. And that's sort of going on. We're going to talk about more after lunch, understanding their learning, where they are. But going back to what you said before, for me, one way to think about this is, okay, A, what knowledge do I want to transfer?
Yeah.
Okay, let's think what knowledge I want to transfer. The knowledge, it could be theoretical,
yeah,
it could be practical. Knowledge I'm transferring. As a result of that knowledge, what will they be able to do different to what they're not doing now?
Yeah.
The goal, the objective of that knowledge. So if you're teaching someone, say, biochemistry, if you're teaching someone, say, a component of a course, if you're teaching someone, say, how nutrition impacts weight, and you know, if you're teaching them a model on calories, you're teaching them a model on nutritional values of food. So you could be teaching them a model on what nutritional values certain foods have. A chocolate bar has this. A piece of fruit has that. Okay, a chocolate bar has so many calories. So many calories, from one scientific point of view, is equal to a pound. A piece of fruit has a lot less calories than, say, a chocolate bar. Equally, it has a lot more nutritional values. So that could be some knowledge you're transferring to the person. As a result of doing that, the objective is they've got more self-awareness of what they're eating and how that impacts their weight reduction. That sort of makes sense.
Yeah, of course. It's like an unfolding.
Yeah, and that's the sort of, and the attitude at the end of it is the realization that nutrition is the most important part one could hypothesize in weight reduction. Because ultimately, in the end, you could spend 3 hours running on a treadmill, and that might be equal of 500 calories. In old money, they used to say that, I think it was 3,000 calories equals a pound. So if you're running a long time on a treadmill to try and burn a pound off, okay, because the person might go to the gym and think I can eat what I want now because I go to the gym, until I realise that gym session they've done is not even worth that chocolate bar. Until I realise I'm going to not eat the chocolate bar and eat an apple instead. And by doing that, I'm consuming 50 calories in an apple, so to speak. And I've got high nutritional values. I won't be as hungry as I would be if I consume the food high in sugar. And equally, the comeback might be, well, an apple's got sugar too. And then you go back to here, what they need to know. Well, the sugar in an apple is natural. The sugar in a chocolate bar is refined. There's a difference. But the person might say in the group, no, there's not, it's still sugar. You're right, it's still sugar, but equally, the payoff is the nutrition you get in the apple that you don't get in the chocolate bar. And as a result of that, they can then have the ability to make a more informed choice what they consume.
So that attitude was throwing me a bit, but basically what it means is what might change in them as a result of your training. Well,
and it's a great point. In self-esteem, they might be more empathic. They might be more empathic. Now, when I've taught empathy on coaching courses, a lot of the time people come from the sort of coaching school is like, you know what, come on, all that sort of stuff, you know. And they come on coaching course, and I'm like, okay, have compassion. Compassion? What do you mean, compassion? I'm like, compassion that you know, people aren't completely their fault, situation they're in. Yeah, I'm a big believer in responsibility, you know, to the point that you can change things, but equally, I'm also a big believer is that if you push someone more than they can tolerate, they'll cause too much stress, they won't do it. So I'm all about extend the comfort zone. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, rather than 5 step forward and 10 back. So it's not about sink or swim, extend the comfort zone for me. So for me, at the end of it, the attitude the coaches have got is have empathy for people. Because people it's not entirely their fault in the situation they're in, because we know there are biological considerations, there are psychological considerations, there are social factors. Okay? Luck plays a part to a point, only to the point that you decide that you can't change it for yourself, but attitude can change. So the coach has an attitude that actually, you know what, soothing is an important part of progression. The coach realises that actually, you know what, if a person's born into this world in a great family, great parents, great genes, great social group, there's a very good chance they're going to do better in life than someone brought up into a world where they've got violence. And not to say the person in that environment can't do well, but statistically, the person in an environment with the great parents and financial stability, from the point of view of science, they probably will do better to one respect, have a more adaptive life, but equally in saying that, what choice does anyone have? You don't choose your parents, or maybe some people think they do, but you don't. You know, you're born into this world. Okay, you don't choose your social group. You don't choose. So you're born in this wonderful world with wonderful parents and great genes, but then a year later, you've got all the promise in the world. The local gangster decides, I want a baby, and steals you, and then you're brought up in violence. You're brought up in hostility. Do you think you'd be a different person than the person you probably would have been in that? I'm pretty sure you would be. You didn't make that choice. So what I mean by empathy is not sympathy, it's empathy. That it takes two to tango. Okay, it's not entirely your fault if you're in a situation. There are other factors that contribute too. And the reason I use that example is because from the point of view of coaching, what participants need to know. So I can introduce them to, say, the biopsychosocial model that I talked about there. How that influences our behaviour. This is quite useful. I can talk about, say, the ABC model. How it's our interpretation of events. And equally then we can sort of give them processes they can use that are tangible, that they couldn't do before, they can do now. And then at the end of it, the attitude they've got, they might have empathy for people they didn't have before. Because before they were trained by the super coach. It was like, you, me, but now they know, actually no, let's hang back a bit. Under a lot of stress, the brain doesn't work really well. You put a lot of stress on people, we know now scientifically, the part of the brain that's logical starts to shut down. Science, facts. Okay? So they know that now. And now they know the next time they manage people in a work environment, saying to somebody, if you don't get that report done, you lose your job. If you don't do this, it's going to happen. If you don't do that, they realise that might not be the best way. The best way might be to create an environment where they can flourish and they can be open-minded and teach them how to do that. And they realise now, attitude, that actually if I stress people out more than they can tolerate, I'll lose them. Does that sort of make sense? So to really consolidate the learning, they're key things for me to think about when you draft the objectives. You take that into account. Okay? What I want you to do now is to create an outline in your training plan. Okay? We're going to think resources. Okay? And we're going to create segments. So I find that course you're going to do, you decide how much time you're going to spend on each segment. So, like this course, after the break, the VAK is going to run for 45 minutes. In that 45 minutes, we're going to do 3 different sets of exercises. One's going to be experiential. You're going to have a go at doing the assessment. The next one's going to be visual. We're going to watch a video. And the next one's going to be you doing role play, how you deliver a course using those components. So what we've got there is the training plan example is time. Okay, so we break the 45 minutes down to 25 minutes. The topic is going to be Century learning style. So for 25 minutes, the first 25 minutes after lunch, we're going to go for Century learning style VAK. The assessment delivery is going to be the questionnaire. Going to complete the VAK questionnaire. The lesson outcome, knowledge, skill, attitude is going to be self-awareness of your own learning style. Now, some of you have done this before. You can do it again. Of your own learning style in context. Understanding to confirm research. I'm going to introduce some scientific research behind it. That can be debated, by the way, but I'll give you the scientific spin on this situation. And how we'll assess that. And that's that component. And I can email you a lesson plan that's got that in a nice little structure. I might have a... Yeah, okay. So I can email that and you can sort of see it on a scheme of work. So lesson number 1, guided learning hours, outcome, teaching and learning strategies, resources, assessment methods, assessment criteria, additional information. So literally, on my scheme of work, I can strip that and put the lesson plan. Okay? I can literally strip that and put it into a lesson plan. And to give you an example, before we sort of start moving to lunch, okay, let's look, because we couldn't get on the slide underneath, but we can look at that. So the first thing is, we've got the guided learning hours. How long will you spend on that segment? You break them down on a scheme of work. I'll send you a scheme of work template if you want to. And then you literally should be able to get a scheme of work and take what's on there and put it onto a lesson plan. Your scheme of work, your storyboard. We'll go into more detail tomorrow. You should be able to take and strip that across. And on that scheme of work, you should have the lesson number, okay, the guided learning hours, what you'll do in class. So we go back to what we did before, the VAK, it's lesson number 3, after lunch. The guided learning hour is going to be 45 minutes. Okay, guided learning. But you will be encouraged to do some learning after the course as well, if you choose to. The lesson outcome we talked about before. Okay, the goal of the lesson is going to be for you to know how to incorporate learning styles in your own training. Okay, it's very specific. And if you're delivering sales training, it might be the goal, how to help people do sales, improve their sales. If you're doing, say, coaching, it might be how the goal would be the outcome to teach people learning styles based on how to help people achieve their goals. So can you see the outcome is different? For this, it's about your training. You've got a training course by how to deliver training, and the VAK is about you, at the end of it, knowing how to incorporate into your training. That's the goal. That's what I'm focused on. Okay? The teaching strategy is going to be questionnaire. We're going to do role play. We're going to do experiential stuff with visuals. The resources, we've got this one little thing, projector. We've got flip chart. We've got questionnaires. You've got the resources manual. The assessment method is going to be discussion, practical, observation, watching you do what you do. The criteria of assessment is going to be clear. It's going to be based on observation and your discussion. You be able to tell me what VARK is or VAK is. You being able to do a mini 5-minute presentation to incorporate all that. Additional information is going to be, if you require more information, then we run streams, we've got stuff available online, other resources if you need. Okay? And this sort of gives you an idea, practicality. Let's say, for example, a coaching course I run. The coaching course I run, the objective is understand the skills, behaviours, attitudes, beliefs and values of an effective coach or mentor. Okay, you'll be familiar with this because you did this, and that's just sort of an objective. Okay, well that's an aim to transfer that knowledge, but the objective is to be able to then utilise that and apply models to achieve that. The resources are going to be PowerPoint, flip chart, coaching manner. Okay, so I sort of stripped it out of a coaching course that I teach. The assessment method is going to be ensuring practicing coaching or mentoring practice, identify characteristics of effective coaching and mentoring in arrangement plan. So the method is you filling in that protocol that you send back to me, the manual, and you fire it back to me, and in discussion during the course we have a discussion, and I ask you what are the characteristics. I ask you open questions. Okay, what are best practices in coaching? What are characteristics of effective coaching? So asking open questions, and we'll go into more detail. Not do you understand what that means? Yes or no? Closed question. Open questions for assessment, to measure your assessment, to measure whether you know, through discussion, through question answer, and assessment method. But we'll talk about this in more detail after lunch as well. Assessment criteria, okay. An example here, and that we can, during the course, through question answer, and obviously if you're doing an assessment, when you send it back, we can check that and clarify that. So criteria. Additional method information could be the session supported by Skype, webinar, YouTube, manual, and so on and so forth. Okay. What we're going to talk about too after lunch is really important too, persuading learners of benefits. Okay. And I mentioned before that you could be in a situation that the people, if you live in corporate training, they might think, well, why do I have to be here for? And there might be a requirement they need. It might be in the case of the gym memberships that I talked about before, the goal being not to have fun, the goal was to increase the customer retention. I mentioned earlier before when I used to deliver training as well as doing education in care homes, I deliver some training as well, and people sometimes would turn up and think, okay, this refresher, I've done it 6 months ago, why didn't I be here again? And they'd say it point blank. They get there at 9:30 and say, can I go at lunchtime, Jim? I've done this 6 months ago. Why am I doing it again? Well, you can go whenever you want. I say you can go now if you want to, but I'm not marking you as being present. Well, why is that? Because if you go and you work with a young person and something happens, one of the young offenders can be quite volatile, whose head's it on? No, you've got to take responsibility and do. And if you know it that well, you help. So you decide. So the thing is, it's sort of knowing. And I can appreciate, people have got things to do. Some of them felt they could be somewhere else, but but equally, you might have a course that people are highly motivated, like you guys, and you're here. It's different how you and that's sort of thing to think about. Now, what are the real benefits for your delegates attending your training? When you've got people as highly motivated as you guys, you don't have to sell benefits in that respect. Okay, you've got your own motivations. Some of you got coaching companies, some of you want to do workshops, some of you sort of been trainers for a long time. It's a different ball game, but equally we can pitch the course to you. But pitch the course to and from a sales point of view, I know, you might say you don't work in sales, but we're all sales people to a point because we buy people. The biggest mistake a lot of therapists do, by the way, if we've got therapists as an example, they love what they do so much, they sell on their values, on what's important to them. Not realising if you're a coach or a trainer, people have got their own reasons for being there. So know what they want. Consider concerns they might have. The concerns might be parking, the concerns might be the level of the group, the concerns could be many concerns. It could be lunch, it could be, a lot of things could be, but you look at ways and you can address their concerns, plan what you're going to say at the beginning of training, and that's what we're going to focus on after lunch. How you're going to address their concerns, overcome concerns, and that could be anything from parking, how to get there, be prepared for that. And we're going to really focus on that after lunch as well, to help you along the way. So before we sort of break for lunchtime, and after lunch you're going to get a chance after the VAK to start writing your own draft objective. You can work that as a group, be very clear. We'll go into how to address people's concerns, how to deal with resistance. And resistance isn't just resistance of people being difficult to work with. Resistance could be people being over-compliant. That's a different type of resistance. Now, people buy into what you do so much they just jump through whatever hoops they'll take it as a given. That can be resistance too. If they see you as being this sort of the all-powerful mighty one, whatever he or she says goes. That's resistance too, because you don't want that. You want them to question what you do to a point. Why do I do this? And how do I do that? And so on and so forth. Because at the end of the day, resistance isn't just the person in the back being hard work, but we'll look at how to deal with resistance too. In that point of view, ways you can deal with it, which is key. I've used examples myself in my own, training journey where how you deal with resistance. And resistance could be someone being over-compliant. That could be being resistant. I mentioned before that one time when I was delivering training to members of the Air Force, one guy says to me, who was quite senior in the group, blatantly in front of the group, says when I was delivering a presentation on imagery and rehearsal, he used some obscene language at that point. He said, "That's a load of bull, I won't repeat the language in front of a wonderful group in that respect." But rather than sort of challenge him, I said, "Okay, let me demonstrate." So what I did is I said, "Okay, I'm going to do some visualization with you." So I got a heart rate monitor like I've got here, and he had one too, one of these sort of things that tell you how much you've slept too, by the way. And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna get you to take your heart rate before imagery visualization and afterwards." And he took the heart rate, as you do, and it was slightly higher than what it normally is. So it was about, say, 90-95 BPM. So the normal range is about 60 to 90. Okay? And I said to him, let's do 10 minutes visualization. But visualization is not just for that. Visualization can be for many things, rehearsal and technical and so forth. But I said, let's do it from the point of view of decompressing imagery to de-escalate. And 10 minutes went by of breathing. I did some parasympathetic breathing through his tummy and breathe. And in about 10 minutes, he went to about, say, 65. So it was social proof. He could have polarised the group, but he didn't, because he did me a favour, because that's 30 beats per minute less reduction. Huge reduction in breathing. So if you multiply that by 24 hours a day, that's about 10,000 beats less strain on your heart. And he said, "Well, will it stay that way?" I said, "Well, I doubt it. Do it again." So if you had a pain relief tablet, you don't take one pain relief, that's it. So what I'm saying, I'm not advised on take pain relief tablets, by the way. I'm just an example. But from this point of view, just do it again. But what it meant to him, we talk about what it means to the person. I said, I'm going to get you to do a complex task. But do it, you've got to run down the corridor and back again, when your heart rate's back here again, and you're going to do a task. He did the task, and now you do the task again when you de-escalate. And you tell me where you're better mentally. And group started. And he was like, wow, powerful stuff. To think that you can reduce. And from the point of view of resistance, you bring them in. Okay? We don't argue, there's no point arguing about that. You back what you do, evidence is there. From everyone's perspective, everyone's right from their own perspective. They've got their own paradigm. Okay? If you argue with a fool, you make two fools. Not implying he was a fool by any stretch of the imagination, he's a great professional, but that's the paradigm. Okay? The point being is that these are things you've got to think about, prepare for. And sort of, when you do all this, you're going to have that offhand. Because I could have been, I'm very passionate about this stuff, I could have been hijacked emotionally then for, you know what, no it's not, and blah blah blah, then I would have lost it, it would polarize me. Then they wouldn't have listened to nothing I said the rest of the program. But because he did that, they hung on to every word I said. On to every word I said. Not to mention, I went one step further afterwards, me being the competitive person that I am, I did a little bit of, after the break, what I did like a competition, where it was sort of like a sports competition. And I won, as you do, not bragging on, but I won. Some of these guys were half my age too, and I make a point, look, if you can't beat me, you've got flipping problems, as you do. We set up these sort of things that we had to sort of, throw a ball at. And a little bit of a task. I rigged the task to make sure I could win because I had no practice at it. As you do. I wouldn't do something that, and I thought one was going to get out of hand, and I'd make sure as you do. So choose your battles carefully. So we're going to have a break for lunch now. Any questions, comments otherwise?
No.